Per usual, living on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. Let's take a look at some altcoins. It is Wednesday. Now I'm going to go through a few that most of you will be angry that I'm discussing, and that's fine. Show me that emotion in the comments. Give me some alts to talk about. We do a live stream on Thursdays at 2 p.m. EST. Hope to see you there. If not, the recording is immediately available on YouTube. But in any event, you can give me specific coins you'd like me to discuss in the comments, or just show up and we'll talk about them. So it's been quite a week for a select few coins. I mean, it's a long tail here, right? Bitcoin's up, I think 7%-ish on the week. So anything above that is beating BTC. And there's quite a list, there's like 5. That's not nothing. But most importantly, Solana obviously up 43% on the week. I don't see anybody talking about near 0 people. Injective, we have a Injective enjoyer who follows this channel. He knows who he is. Cosmos, nobody really talking about yet. AVAX either. Aptos, I don't see anything. And Monero either. I don't see anybody talking about any of this stuff. I still see people for the most part who are quite bearish across the board. That's fine. You can have a view, but trade the chart. I mean, you're missing significant stuff. We've talked about Solana and Link and AAVE for many weeks. They looked good. They went up. It's not like a secret. Anyway, I'll talk about some of these and some of the other coins here that look decent as a group. Generally, there's still not a massive move towards altcoins away from Bitcoin. Alts have benefited from Bitcoin essentially being kind of flat for the past week, consolidating. I'll talk about that in a second too. And I have to mention this because a lot of the coins I'm going to talk about do have a regulatory risk that nobody pays attention to. That's fine. You can ignore it. But if the SEC starts to go after these coins and then they get delisted, it can be a problem for price. Obviously, the biggest one on this list that isn't sort of understood maybe is Solana, I think, especially now that it's up as much as it is. It may quickly enter the SEC's zeitgeist or radar because of how much it's up. This past week, you can agree with it, disagree with it, doesn't matter. But what we don't want to see for these coins is mass US exchange delistings, obviously. And there's a list here on CoinGecko. Basically, they're just pulling this list from SEC complaints. And another reason I bring this up today is because they went after SafeMoon, the SEC did, and SafeMoon was an obvious egregious example where to most people who knew anything or a little bit about something, it was clearly a Ponzi or a pyramid scheme or whatever, combination of all of that. So that's like the low-hanging fruit. But I think as some of these coins have a price resurgence, they may pop up back in the SEC's consciousness, especially if they're approving Bitcoin ETFs. They're looking at the next thing from a regulatory perspective, and maybe these coins settle with the SEC like EOS does, whatever, right? But just as long as people are aware that that is a possibility. And from my perspective, it's for what I'm doing for allocations. You allocate less, you take profit quicker. You try to dodge the regulatory risk as much as you can. Solana isn't SafeMoon, but it's on the list of things the SEC tends not to like. The 4 things that matter, again, rates, regulation, Bitcoin halving, Bitcoin ETF. Rates are still paused as of today. Powell will give his presser in a few minutes here. And it is worth noting the dollar is still very strong. It looks like in a vacuum, not knowing what this ticker was, that you'd be very bullish on this chart. It's consolidated. It's tried to break down. It didn't. And it looks like it wants to go higher. It's a combination of failed head and shoulders, inverted head and shoulders, cup and handle. There's tons of stuff here. Just a vanilla cloud breakout. So if the DXY does go higher, that is likely to eventually provide a headwind for all of risk. So just keep that in mind in the near term, as some of this stuff is screaming 40-50% in a week, right? Link, Solana. And then there's stuff like this, which I don't see anybody talking about. I talked about it today on Twitter. This is a regional bank. It's got around $3 billion in total assets, down over 30% on the day. And there are probably going to be more mergers and or FDIC announcements regarding regional banks. The last smaller regional bank sort of came and went and didn't get a lot of press, but it's just something to be aware of and have an opinion about. Is this going to be bullish for risk, bullish for crypto? Is the Fed going to have to do more and intervene more? Can the Fed actually stay higher for longer? Does this even matter, right? Now, what I'm not showing you is the 5 other regional banks that also have tickers deeply in the red this year. Home Street, First Foundation, Sunlight Financial. So anyway, just something else to think about. We're talking about alts. And alts obviously don't look like that. Solana doesn't look like that. Link doesn't look like that. So you can be happy that things could be far worse and are in the meat space in the regional bank world. Dominance is strong. It is reaching the logical TA target based on the cloud, based on measured move at around 54 to 57%. When this ETF actually gets announced, I like 60s, honestly, as far as dominance. I expect a tradable news event on the announcement, and then we'll see what happens after that, right? It may be an eventual sell of news when it actually gets launched next year, sometime around halving. Similar to COVID, we had COVID in March, and then we had halving in May. There may be a similar, sudden retracement around halving based on a buy the rumor, sell the news type thing. Especially from a market perspective, dominance shoots up quickly, right? So just something to think about going down the road, but it still looks bullish. Again, BTC still looks to be the thing in the moment broadly relative to alts. This is the alt market cap minus ETH minus Bitcoin, still ranging. It did save itself from making a lower low. And again, this is kind of like what most of the charts look like. Some of them are still ranging. Some of them are making W's. Some of them are screaming higher past what would be the 300 billion mark on this specific chart. So we are seeing different flavors of this. It's not all just monotone, lower lows, looks like death. It's not like AVAX and DOT as of 2 weeks ago. There's a little bit of life coming back to some of these alts. As far as an alt BTC pair, I still think this does try to go lower, basically to the pre-2021 breakout mania phase of alts. That would make the most sense to me as a group. And I also think ETH catches up eventually. It's going to take an influx of price action to cold start that ETH engine. But when it gets roaring, it will get headlines. It'll be fast and furious. So just keep that in mind. I don't think it's going to stand around here while Link and Solana are plus 50% and it's basically flat. Looking at stablecoins, Tether continues to issue a little bit of circulating supply and USDC continues to just dwindle and melt. So still not, again, a broad influx of flows here to alts. Before we talk about some specific charts, let me mention today's video sponsor, Kraken Pro. Kraken Pro is a complete overhaul of the Kraken trading experience with a one-stop shop for advanced and professional traders. Kraken Pro enables efficient trading execution across multiple markets with a UI that allows for unique optimization tailored to your trading style. You can check out Kraken Pro with the link in the description of this video. And it is Fed Day. Happy Fed Day to all those who celebrate. BTC is going to be bouncing wildly all over the place, but when we get a move like this up or down and you're expecting continuation, what you do want to see is this super tight consolidation. So it's good that we've relaxed a little bit. It's good that we're consolidating. Generally, you would expect this to make higher highs to continue. Now, we've had quite the move in October. No promises. That's not me hedging my bets here. It's just, look, we are where we're at, right? On the daily, RSI is at 70 or 80 by some metrics. So we may continue to consolidate, right? We may have fake out breakouts, all this other stuff. But in the end, I do think bullish continuation is the most likely case for Bitcoin. But in the meantime, alts can have their little party. ETH continues to just hold, much like Bitcoin, sideways. ETH is trading not like an alt. It's really trading kind of in between this limbo stage of an alt / Bitcoin, Certainly not trading like Solana or Link and a lot of this other stuff. But on trend, it does look good. It's going to take some time, but it looks okay. Ultimately, again, 1990 is where I'd want to be from a trade entry perspective to be super, super sure that we're actually going higher. You're probably going to see people cheating that level a little bit, and there's probably going to be some excitement on any higher high here. So you have to make that allocation decision. Do we want to start to take profit out of Solana or Link or whatever else and into ETH or out of BTC, etc.? That's up to the trader, obviously. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is the time when we finally break 2000 on ETH. I don't even have a massive ETH position. I'm just saying it would not surprise me. Now, ETH BTC still looks tragic, and it may continue to look tragic. Bitcoin, if it breaks up, will probably break up more price-wise than ETH. So that's something to keep in mind. Still no bull div on any of these lows. Doesn't exactly look healthy testing this June 2022 low, it's got an inevitable top. It's got a bearish cloud breakout. Doesn't have the flows on its side. And it's got Solana and Link breathing down its neck now, sort of stealing attention share from the market. So from a trading perspective, ideally we do see some rotation happen, and we do see ETH have some sort of move in November, right, in this month. BNB has been also kind of flat. I think it's priced just about where you'd expect it if you are worried about regulatory stuff or news risk, headline risk, whatever, right? I just think as a coin, as an exchange, it's just a massive avoid. And then if you go against BTC, kind of the same picture in that it still has potentially a long drop left in it. It has pulled back considerably, but remains bearish, remains in a bearish channel along with most of these alts against BTC. It's great that they're up 30% in a week, but they're still quite bearish relative to BTC. So I don't know what it would take for me to actually trade BNB, but now to me doesn't feel like that time. Here's Solana, and it's had quite the aggressive move higher, and you always have to be careful about pullback potential. You know, people get skittish. You're getting late longs up here. You're getting people who are shorting this at this point, which is good. But we do have a lot of volume coming in, which is good for these highs. But don't be surprised if we do see an eventual, 20% down day or something gross like that for stuff like this. I think that's perfectly in the cards eventually. It's hard to predict, but the higher we go, I think people start saying, okay, we're up 100% in 2 weeks or whatever it is. I'm going to just protect myself from downside here. Trend looks great. It does feel like it's getting a little excitable up here. Against BTC, it also looks good. Well past the measured move here. Another reason why if I still had a leveraged SOL position on, I would be looking to close up here. I don't have this measured, but if you're in it for the multi-month inverted head and shoulder, you could argue this has plenty of ways to go. You just sit there. You're probably well in profit at this point. But if you're like me and we're trading the kind of lower time frame inverted head and shoulders, you're probably out or looking to get out from a measured move perspective, right? We're well past the measured move of that consolidation. Link has slowed down a bit, which is fine. It was an earlier mover. As long as we can hold these highs, I think you'd expect continuation. You'd expect moves higher, bounce at 950, 850 possible. It all looks fine. Long term, 29 would be Bitcoin's 42K equivalent. Against BTC, it also looks like it's trying to move higher. It's got this is the 100-400 cross on the daily, and it's trying to get out of this falling wedge. So for me, a set it and forget it, non-leveraged position totally works on Link, on Sol, and you just let it sit there, right? You take your wins, you sell half on a double, whatever you need to do, and you just let the runner run, Here's Near, which again, nobody's talking about this thing. Not that there's a reason to, but it is up around 30% in the past week. And as Link and Sol start to creep up, you have people looking around, looking at, Near, that's down, whatever it was, 92% from highs at a nice even round number of $1. It's a layer 1. It has a pulse. Trend-wise, it's still not above the 2-day cloud, but maybe something to watch into 2024, right? And on the BTC pair, also trying to break out above the cloud, above that trend channel. Another super just angry, aggressive downtrend the entire past 2 years. INJ also similar to Sol in that it's now exceeded extensions on expected measured move targets. So again, for me, if I'm on leverage on this type of trade, I start to get nervous just because it's up so much so quickly. It did have a nice consolidation, Adam and Eve and or ascending triangle, but it still looks fine from a trend perspective, right? Now you're probably not going to get margin called on leverage if you traded this as a breakout, but the worry for me is to just give it all back over the course of a couple of days if I was using leverage, for example. And here's the INJ BTC chart. Almost looks like could be an all-time high soon on Binance. Also an ascending triangle breakout, also above the daily cloud. So I would much rather trade charts like this than DOT or AVAX, which I'm about to talk about, right? Even Atom, which has had a decent move. It has some sort of harmonic here. You can see it. It's a bat or a crab. I don't know. Whatever the 886, I think that's the bat. Maybe it's the bullish bat. Anyway, still below the 3-day cloud, has that W characteristic to it. And if you're convinced this is a cycle low, you just start allocating into this stuff across the board and you put your stop at any lower low, and that's it, right? You don't really need to think about it, I don't think, any more than that. Atom BTC on the 3-day has a pretty interesting range. It is certainly at a historic low in the range. Again, a very aggressive and angry downtrend over the past year and a half. I don't hate it from just let's take a shot, put something on and see what we can get out of this from a range trade perspective. It's not for me, but I don't hate that argument. It looks pretty good from that perspective. AVAX up considerably as well, but still far below high time frame cloud, far below any diagonal resistance. You may call me a fool, but I'd rather trade this above 15 than here. From 11 to 13, it could just take a long time to play out. And these may also play out as a massive inverted head and shoulders. You can see the left shoulder, the head, and then the right shoulder would be probably sometime in 2024. So I'd watch for that as well. Now, AVAX had a pretty decent case for an inverted head and shoulders here, and it got denied hard. So some of these have had good bear market bounces, right? But I think it's probably a little too early to call it on some of these. Now, AVAX BTC hit its July 2021 low. So again, I don't see anything wrong with trying to shoot your shot here. If you're an alt enjoyer, you're ready to trade these alts, right? And you've waited 2 years plus for something like this. Yeah, put your stop loss at any lower low and see what happens. I think that stop loss will get hit, but if that's what you're willing to trade, right? That's one way to call your shots on the bottoms here. It's still far below the 2-day cloud, still in this bearish channel, but I don't hate taking a stab there on stuff like that. Dot, similar to AVAX, below the high time frame clouds, below any diagonal that's reasonable. Still, to me, needs a little bit of life before considering something like this. But let's say everything stays bullish from a rotation play. Maybe you harvest your gains or half of your gains into something like this. And if you're trading your altcoin allocation and you're thinking, I want to stay heavily allocated, I want to take some risk off of Link or Solana or whatever else, right? I assume that's what people are doing already because some of these charts are up and don't really have a reason to be up other than that they're listed and have a pulse. But just throwing that idea out there. And on the BTC pair also, just hit fresh all-time lows like a week ago. Very angry downtrend, far below the 2-day cloud against BTC. AAVE, a little bit of a different story, more bullish than the previous charts. Different sector, we're talking about layer ones versus DeFi. To me, this looks like a mirror image of the maker chart. This is the maker price fractal at the bottom here. So I still like 120 to 135. Yearly pivot at 130. For me, this is just something that you just sit on for the cycle. I don't think there's any rush to continue to massage a position or anything. Now, if it's breaking below 70, that's when I think you start to get nervous. But ultimately, unless it makes a lower low at like 60, 50, I don't think there's really that much concern. I think the upside potential for some of this stuff is considerable relative to the downside risk at this point. AAVE BTC has some sort of ascending triangle, AAVE, trying to make its way through the high time frame cloud, still in a bearish trend channel. So it's not exactly hyper bullish against BTC, but it does look better than some of those layer ones do, certainly. And lastly, I'll just talk about TON. Had someone request this one specifically, and I hadn't talked about it because it's hard to trade. It's not really widely available. I think this is the correct ticker. This is on Poloniex. But it is above the daily cloud. It does have kind of this, head and shoulders characteristic. This is on BTC. So I don't love that, but if it can maintain this 2 to 250 range, then I think it has a shot at higher highs. But against BTC, it looks rather weak. So that's all I have for this one. Again, live stream tomorrow, 2 p.m. EST. We'll have a chat and a giggle. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.